Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a special guest, Attorney Tom Winslow, and he is here to talk about a specific amendment that is important right now for parents and students, and it's called the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. Well, first, let me tell you about our attorney today, and I'm going to read just to make sure I get it correct. Tom Winslow is a founding partner with Goldfish Winslow, located in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. And he has vast experience with medical malpractice, personal injury cases. He also has worked on employment law, criminal matters, homeowners associations, jail misconduct, maritime law, which, by the way, you have to get extra certification to do that. It's very interesting, and product liability. But he's litigated many other cases and a variety of different topics. And specifically today, what we're going to talk about is as I mentioned, the PPRA for short. That's the acronym for the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. And the reason why I want to discuss this is right now, especially during COVID, many parents right now for the very first time are learning of the curriculum that their children have been learning. And there are definitely some concerns. So there are laws in place to protect us, and it's good for parents to just know what their rights are. So without further ado, I want to bring in our special guest, Tom Winslow. So first and foremost, you're a father as well. Besides being an attorney, you're first and foremost a father.
I am a father. I have a beautiful 7-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy, and we actually do a lot of homeschooling at our house. But I am blessed to have a great wife and 2 great kids. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, and I can attest to that. I love your family. They're wonderful, and Miss Lauren, she works overtime, definitely with taking care of the family. So, yeah, Tom. So it is an interesting time, 2020. Thank God we're almost to the end of 2020. I don't know if it'll change much, but as far as COVID, but people, some children around the country are still virtually at home, still learning. And I do think it's important to talk about the rights that parents and students have. So my first question to you would be, what is the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment? PPRA is the acronym. And, what are the origins of such an amendment?
Sure. So you actually have basically kind of 2 different areas to look at, Sarah, regarding a pupil's rights, a student's rights that's in school. You got, of course, the federal law to look at. You got the state law. Of course, here where I am in South Carolina, the PPRA is an amendment that went in actually the 70s under the Hatch Act to try to protect pupils and students in regard to kind of allowing a parent to have authority over certain aspects. There's really 8 topics that came out in that area until 2001. The No Child Left Behind Act actually put additional topics into that scenario of kind of allowing a parent to have that supervision. I don't know if you remember, Sarah, but back in the day when I was in public school, my parents had to sign waiver forms for like sexual education, sex ed, stuff like that. And that's kind of stemming from the PPRA. Okay, so basically a school and a teacher can't just teach certain aspects without a parent's permission. And so there are certain fields that the PPRA covers.
So, and that's great. And I'm going to put, when I finish with the video and I put this on the website and everything, I'm going to, there's a really great link to kind of specify it from the U.S. Department of Education, and both for that one and another act that we're going to talk about. But if you don't mind, I might just read these 8 that you specifically mentioned. So things that, just for parents to know, if you're concerned, if this sounds like something your child may even approaching, been asked about political affiliations, mental and psychological problems that could be embarrassing to the student or the family, sex behavior and attitudes, illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating and demeaning behavior, critical appraisals of other individuals of whom respondents have close family relationships, legally recognized privileged or analogous relationships such as those of lawyers, physicians, and ministers, religious practices, affiliations, and income. These are just the top. I know there's more that goes into each one, but those are things that I want parents, we want, you and I and everyone want parents and students to know. If you're getting questions or quizzes or anything that ask even approaching ask those sorts of things. It's okay to ask questions about that and reach out and look for help if you're uncomfortable with some things that are coming out.
Correct. And so, I mean, if a school or a teacher is trying to teach this stuff, it's required to get a parent's permission. And if they're not doing that, then that could be a potential issue with the PPRA. The one thing that was added in 2001 with the No Child Left Behind Act was in regard to situations, a lot of times dealing with minor children. So obviously children under the age of 18, for collecting information regarding marketing purposes, right? So if you're trying to get information to market to those kids, it sounds crazy, but not just the schools or education systems or colleges, but toys and magazines, improper stuff, and other certain non-emergency medical examinations. So it adds in a couple additional categories more recently as in the last 20 years, but on top of those additional 8.
That's really interesting. Sadly, it's kind of sad that you have to worry your kids might get marketed to.
Yeah.
But
and actually, what's funny is that's another federal law, Sarah. It's called COPPA, COPPA.
okay.
And COPPA means Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule. And what that means is that, and I don't know, again, if you've had this, say your child goes on a field trip and they want to take pictures of your child on the field trip, and they'll have the parents sign a waiver. Oh, I can use these pictures, right? That's COPPA. That's saying, hey, for children under the age of 13, we need to get the parents' permission to be able to use their image and their likeness for marketing purposes. So you got PPRA and now you got COPPA that both work together to try to protect children from exploitation in a fashion.
Okay, great. So that's really helpful. And then let's bring up the other one for guardians and students that we should be aware of, which is Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is FERPA.
FERPA.
Acronym for short. Okay, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so FERPA is designed, everyone's familiar with HIPAA, right? And it kind of protects health records. And so FERPA is the same kind of concept, protecting education records of minors. Okay, so FERPA was put into place to protect the records of children under the age of 18 on 2 parts. One, so people that aren't entitled to get those records can't just go and get those records, but also it allows parents immediately able to get records for children under the age of 18. So, if a child typically didn't want to give their parents the report card, potentially without FERPA, they might not have that permission actually to get that report card. So it allows the proper adults to get minors' records without them being exposed to anybody that might want them. So it's kind of a protection for educational records for a minor.
That's very interesting. And I'm going to add that to the website as well. There's a great link from the U.S. Department of Education on specifics about that. But it's great for us to just have this information. Parents should know it. And this isn't, I know we're talking public school right now, but even for parents that have their children in private school, this is important to be aware of this. So I have a question. My next question would be, Tom, of course, how do we get in touch with you? But what should parents or students do if they believe their rights are being violated right now?
Sure. So let's, if you allow me, Sarah, in regard to FERPA, it is in regard mostly to schools that receive federal funding. So keep that in mind. And these federal laws affect schools with federal funding. On the other hand, FERPA stops at the age of 18. So only in regard to children under the age of 18. And it actually supersedes HIPAA. So HIPAA does not play into FERPA. There's actually an exception for FERPA. So you can get your child's medical records from like a school nurse or something like that under FERPA, actually not under HIPAA. There's an exception in HIPAA on that. And like I said, there are also state laws there. So keep in mind, in South Carolina, there's actually state regulations and state law under Title 59 to protect the children in South Carolina. And we recently just had a Supreme Court case in South Carolina in regard to what's called Abbeville versus South Carolina. That says all children are under a constitutional obligation to receive at least a minimally adequate education. There's a lot of challenges in regard to that regarding rural districts that don't get enough money. There's a lot of stuff going on federally and state-wise. And so the proper way to handle a situation like that, one, would be to address the situation head on and see what the school is saying in regard to violating these rights or not giving the proper waivers or using a likeness. And if you're not satisfied with that answer, then go see an attorney, go see someone that to actually talk to you about this information before you decide just to jump into litigation. Let's walk through the process and see if it's beneficial for you and your child before we decide to go any further than that. But sometimes litigation is necessary.
So if they want to get a hold of you, and of course, so you know, this is a real video. I have a 5-month-old who wants to cry when
Perfect. That's how it should be.
I want to. But how would and I'm going to put your information up on our sites, but how would someone go about finding you, Tom, if they wanted to talk about some concerns that they had?
Yeah, so anyone can feel free to call me at 843-357-9301. They can feel free to email me on any topic, this or anything else, tom@goldfinchwinslow.com.